Hi, this is Dr. Jim Turnage here in San Diego, California, and welcome to Wonderful Wednesdays. We've been here at the Heart Space for 14 years, each Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Tonight, we continue a brand new class series based on my research and study for a new book, Paradox, Healing Your Life by Embracing Contradiction. In the next weeks, we will explore and practice this powerful approach to the mysteries, incongruities, and puzzles in our lives, to move ever further down our road to greater wisdom and illumination. Welcome. So welcome to Wonderful Wednesdays here at the Heart Space. This is Open at the Top International Spiritual Center, a covenanted community of the Centers for Spiritual Living. This is the new class on Paradox, the second week. Welcome to Wednesday night. So paradox, we're going to talk about why paradox is so important in our lives. And before the recording started, when the music was playing, we were talking about just serendipity of paradoxical things happening. So tonight and this afternoon, I've been very sick, medically sick. And wow, it's just, I'm having a lot of joy getting to do this talk tonight, and I feel bad. And that's paradox. That's paradox. We always have things in our lives that on the one hand it's this, and on the other hand is that, and they're happening at the same time. This is a little review from last week. This is based on a book that I'm writing about paradox, how you can heal your life by embracing contradiction. He said, it's supposed to come up. There we go. An exploration of paradox for the book. Yeah. So tonight we're going to review, talk about cognitive dissonance, consciousness a little bit, which we've done many times before, and fire starting, if there are any pyromaniacs there. So this is my desired life on the left. I like things like in cartoon things, very simplified, so that I can, access it right away. But my life doesn't end up like that. My life ends up like this. Always kind of an abstract, impressionistic painting. So I think we all experience that as well. This is an example of paradox. This is not a real picture or real video of a young woman. This is an optical illusion. And it looks like she is spinning one way or the other. So how are we doing tonight? Which way is she spinning tonight? Oh, I lose you guys?
She switches.
Okay.
She switches for me.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing, I almost always see her going clockwise.
Mostly.
Very, very rarely. Yeah. And most people see this and she goes back and forth, and that's happened a few times for me, but usually it's always right. I used to tell the thing that I saw on the internet that this was an example of whether you have left brain or right brain dominance. And it turns out that that's not neurologically true. But it's interesting because it's a paradox. So what's paradox? It's something that seems to be absurd or contradictory, but in fact is or might be true. Contradiction is a good synonym for it. You have this inherent contradiction that's going on. And we've all thought about paradox, and today I'm experiencing paradox. Paradox. And I've said this before in other classes. Your life is not happening to you; it's happening about you. Your consciousness is creating your life, and so we can, by experiencing paradox, we can find out all sorts of interesting things about our life, our real life, our consciousness. We're always living in paradox, whether you realize it or not. And then last time I talked about my graduation kidney stone. And any of you who have had either childbirth or kidney stones, I don't recommend them for anybody, except I got a measure of enlightenment by having a kidney stone after I graduated as a practitioner, as a religious science practitioner. And I discovered that Whether I lived or died, everything was fine. And they had great drugs at Sharp Memorial Hospital Emergency Department. I learned that. I don't know if I said this last time, but I've told this joke many times. I have an altar at home, and I have a little statue of Jesus and the Buddha, medicine Buddha, and a vial of Dilaudid on my altar. I don't really have Dilaudid; it'd be illegal. But the Dilaudid was a thing that actually helped me get out of so severe pain, so that I could have an experience, a more full experience. Yeah. So in life, we often think of things being good or bad or neutral. We have a tendency to focus on the bad, even though the percentage of things in our life that are bad are very low. Percentage of the good are small to moderate in number, and neutral is the vast majority of things. Things in your life are mostly neutral. They don't affect you directly one way or the other, but they're the ground state. They are the basis for your existence, and we just accept them as being there. So why is our approach to this limited so much? Number one, we are not good at estimating good, bad, or neutral. Like I say, very few things. The bad things in our life are tiny compared to the neutral things, and usually the good things. And we're also blind to the unlimited options in every situation. So I was working with a guy this week, and he said, well, I have two, it could either turn out this way or that way. And he was very disturbed by that. And I said, well, why do you believe that? He said, well, it's either going to turn out this way or that way. And I listed about, 3, 4, 5 things. They were different. And I said, if there's one thing, then there are two things. If there are two things, there are 10 things. If there are 10 things, there are 1,000 things. If there are 1,000 things, there are unlimited number of things. And we get blind to the options that are available to us at any moment. And then finally, when we start seeing stuff like the kidney stone, we might not see the spiritual wisdom that is produced by a kidney stone, or for me anyway, was produced for a kidney stone. And we have a tendency to turn our back on the wisdom. But so when it says, yea, thou walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me. It's a true statement. But it's the shadow that bothers you. There is no death there. It's turning your back on the light of God, and that casts the shadow. So we turn our back on spiritual wisdom. That's one of the reasons this approach, this simplistic approach of it's either this way or that way, or it's good or bad or neutral. Yeah. So what will you do to experience the greatest, highest good for all in each situation? I guess Stan's not going to be here tonight. I wanted to hear a story about his greatest, highest good. But we always know that when we're praying for someone and we don't have permission to pray for who they ask to pray for, we can always say, I see the greatest, highest good for all concerned in this situation. And that doesn't limit you. So this is Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson was the father of hypnosis, medical hypnosis in the United States. And he used paradox regularly. He would find paradoxes in the patient's story and use those paradoxes to have them discover what the answer was for them. So we in Ericksonian psychotherapy, we don't actually try to resolve paradox. We embrace it. We look for the symptoms. We look for these contradictions, and we embrace them. And often he would actually prescribe the symptoms they were having. So we talked about it last time. He told a guy who was really upset that he knew he was shortening his life by all his cigarette smoking and his life choices. And so he had the guy tell his story again with his eyes closed and repeat it again. And it was in more and more detail when he repeated it. And he said, I want you to go home and do that at least a couple of times a day. So he went away and called Erickson back and said, I don't need to come back because I quit smoking. I quit doing all these bad things I was doing for my health. What was the intervention? The intervention was telling your tale of woe, telling the story. And he starts listening to his story, and then he does what he needs to do to resolve the paradox.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't that what they do in the 12-step programs? You have to write your story and you have to tell it out loud.
Yeah. I like the
So
story. Well, I tell people when they go to 12 steps, you're not going there to tell your story for you. You're going there to use your story to help other people. This is your story is not for you. Now, in reality, they're telling their story and they're listening to it. And if they're not convinced, like Erickson would say, they're going to hear their story told with different names in it in the group. And then they can come to some understanding about how to do what they need to do to be clean and sober. Yep, telling the story is important. So prescribing the symptom. So most therapists you go to and you tell the tale of woe and they try to give you all sorts of techniques to decrease the paradox. And our approach is different. Our approach is to embrace the paradox and maybe even prescribe the symptoms, the anxiety, the shame, prescribe all that stuff and then see what you can discover. We assume in Ericksonian psychotherapy that you have the answers. They're within you. They're already there, which is a lot like New Thought. The wisdom is within you. And Erickson was not a religious person. He was not a woo-woo, lefty kind of person. He was a psychiatrist, traditionally trained psychiatrist. He also had polio when he was a kid, and a post-polio syndrome, and he was in severe chronic pain every day till he died. So he knew how to use symptoms and experience paradox to heal others and to have his life being very fulfilled. Yep. So this is where he told him to tell the problem to himself. And he stopped smoking. But he also said at the end, he has little techniques that he would say, do not stop smoking right away. That's a double bind because it assumes you're going to stop smoking. And how fast? Not right away, but it's already done. So when we're doing spiritual mind treatment, we say what's already accomplished. Whether the person we're praying for sees it or not, we say the way it's supposed to be, the way it's going to be already accomplished. Perhaps not right away. That's a challenge to someone too when you say not right away. They just might do it quicker. So in our lives, how are we dealing with paradox? I want to talk about cognitive dissonance. We talked about this years ago. Cognitive dissonance was coined by Leon Festinger, and the study that he used for this was a cult that believed the aliens were going to come and take them away. And they all went up to the hill, and the spaceships did not show up. And so he followed all the people that were in the group to find out how they dealt with this contradiction. This contradiction is cognitive dissonance. It was called When Prophecy Fails. And study was done in 56. So some people say the book is 57, but it's about that time. And then we know from San Diego, there was Heaven's Gate in 1997. Those of were around San Diego. And they were going to go up to the comet and be taken away.
That's who I thought you were talking about, actually.
Yeah, it's
it was more than one group.
Oh yeah, this is a fairly common thing. Heaven's Gate. And of course, spaceship didn't come to the comet. And they were really distraught. And so what did they do? You remember?
They killed themselves.
They killed themselves, yeah.
Yep.
But I was wondering if they killed themselves in anticipation.
Yeah, because things weren't working out. So in cognitive dissonance, there's situations like forced compliance behaviors will create dissonance. Decision-making will create dissonance. Simple effort will create dissonance. So they had decision making. They decided that the aliens were coming, and they didn't come. They decided, they got rid of all their stuff ahead of that. Their lives were wrecked by surviving afterwards. And in the Heaven's Gate, they committed suicide. So remember, the objective world that they're experiencing is real to them. This is not, they're faking it. It's real. Whether they were in Heaven's Gate or they were in When Prophecy Fails, the group When Prophecy Fails. I forget the name of the group. What they're experiencing is real to them. Their consciousness is creating a reality that is as real as anything we imagine. And it's unique. They may have been in a group. We may be in groups. We may have similar backgrounds, but every experience and consciousness is unique. So what do you do when your beliefs fail? There are basically three things in cognitive research and cognitive dissonance. Three things that you can do. You can change your existing beliefs. You can say, well, I guess I was wrong. You know, the aliens were never going to come. I got carried away, blah, blah, blah. You can add new things. So let's say that you don't believe that cigarette smoking causes lung cancer. You'll start going out and finding evidence. In other words, adding to your beliefs to reinforce your belief structure. And you can also finally reduce the importance of the beliefs. Well, I never really believed it that much. So those are the basic things that can happen. There is a really interesting thing though that happens. This is Pontius Pilate, and this is Jesus being turned over the mob. And what did he do? Washed his hands. And that's a ritual thing to do to decrease your responsibility, right? In this case, the cognitive dissonance, that it decreases it. And there are modern studies that show that if you're feeling cognitive dissonance, you can wash your hands of the situation. Hand washing decreases cognitive dissonance. So what's Jesus doing here? You know this one, these are the disciples. And what's he doing?
Washing their feet?
Washing their feet. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's a way of purification. You know, saying I'm no better than you are as a human being. And I'm gonna wash your feet. I'm going to help you be clean and healthy. I'm going to help you be a good person. All baptisms are about this. And water is the thing we usually use. So the Baptist Church and many other churches, we actually get submerged under water in a baptismal that's in the church. And you go up there and put these white robes on, and the preacher grabs your nose and covers your mouth and dips you down into the water and says, in the name of the Father, dip, and the Son, dip, and the Holy Ghost, dip. Rise and join your community. And that's a way that you become a member of the church, because you are baptized and saved. So what's another example of ritual bathing? I know.
Another example? As a child or as an adult or what?
Well, actually, in Islam, you have to do ablutions. You have to, wash your head and face in a certain way. You have to wash your hands. You have to wash your feet. Yeah. So, this is a very common thing. And what are people doing? They're bridging that gap. In other words, that perceived dissonance. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not worthy enough. and he washes the feet. I'm a Muslim and I'm not worthy enough to be in the presence of God without ritual washing, as is described in the Quran. Yeah, so that's an interesting way of reducing cognitive dissonance. So if you get in a situation that you can't figure out what you're going to do, you're not going to add new information, maybe you're not going to change your view, try washing your hands and see if that helps. But what I advocate is that we actually, excuse me, we actually embrace the dissonance rather than try to diminish it and decrease it. So we're going to talk about fire starting as a metaphor for embracing, cognitive dissonance or paradox. This time we're not going to do the natural hypnosis. We're going to do it next time. So you have a conflict in your life and you try to start a fire. You do it by friction, generates heat, a spark, a flame, and enlightenment. How many people did that like in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts?
We did it just for fun.
Yeah. I love this metaphor because you have to get all these things. It won't work if you just get it hot. There needs to be a little spark. You remember when you did it and you had the kindling there?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden that little spark would hit the kindling and then a good kindling for it is steel wool. Actually, that's good.
You have to blow it too.
Yep. That's right. You have to have inspiration and expiration. And then you end up with a flame, which leads to enlightenment. So these are some things from the old slide set that this place of oneness and complete peace is what we're looking for. But things don't happen that way because we don't accept our unity and oneness. And to the degree that we don't, we start generating heat. And the quality of that alienation we perceive as suffering. That friction of the conflict produces the heat because the two beliefs are in direct conflict. And you say, you know what? I really want to believe in this, but I have my big doubts. So you produce the heat, and that mental heat, that spiritual heat gets greater and greater because of the persistent active contact. Here you got this little, I don't know how you did it. We did it with a little dowel into a piece of block of wood. It has a little indented space in it. And you can actually do it another way. I'll show you a picture of another way. So you have to be in contact, with the paradox. You have to be active in doing it. You have to be persistent. And that kinetic energy helps you start the fire. Here's a way. This is from the Boy Scouts handbook. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is like a bow with a a lanyard on it. And you put the stick wrapped around that. And when you go back and forth, it makes the stick turn. A more efficient way of doing it rather than with your hands. And then the spark happens, which catches the kindling on fire. If you don't have a spark, you don't have a tiny flame, and you don't have kindling, you don't get a sustained fire. Your fire will go out immediately. But our prepared consciousness is the kindling for the fire that changes everything. As we work on all of our spiritual path and do the work, the meditation, the prayer, service, and doing these things, we have a prepared consciousness that's ready to be the kindling for the fire. Remember when you light one small flame, one small candle that persists, it burns bright enough in assurance and hope that lights up even the darkest places in our lives. Yeah. What do we do after we get the light? So you make a fire, and then what do you have to do?
The marshmallows.
Get the marshmallows, right? Remember you had somebody tended the fire? I don't know if you did that or not, but you have to tend the fire. You have to continue to give it the right amount of oxygen, the right amount of fuel. You don't just start the fire and walk away. Because if we want it to light things up, we want it to heat our food, we want it to nurture us, keep us secure. We have to keep feeding the fire. And I just put this in because we used to sing this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And finally, paradox and the apparent conflict of the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, are a call to us to bear the heat. The stuff that appears to be wrong, that we don't like that contradiction. That's the call to bear the heat so that we can ultimately produce the flame and the light and the heat. And the protection of our surrender to this flame, when we do that, we're on the road to transcendence. If you get pretty good at doing this, starting a fire, you're like the go-to person in your troop. Go back, sorry about that. You're like the go-to fire starter in your group. Because you want the fire started so you can get the marshmallows and roast the weenies and all that stuff. And you get better and better at going through the steps of embracing the difficulty of no fire, no flame, and using friction and kindling and fuel and nurturing of the fire on the road to transcendence. What do you do when your belief fails? You said. So next week we're going to start talking about some other things that we've done before. I'm trying to get a little bit more information about this. We're going to talk about utilizing everyday trance. So lots of times, I don't really do direct hypnosis very much anymore because it's not necessary. Because people naturally go into trance-like states automatically, all by themselves. But we are going to talk about Ericksonian hypnosis and Ernest Rossi, the late Ernest Rossi, and what happens when you utilize this innate creative ability that we have. And we're going to talk about the link between our minds and our genetics. Any questions?
Nope.
How do you feel?
I feel medium lousy.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not feeling any better than you were before.
I'm hanging in there though.
Yeah.
I'll be well enough to drive home.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I'll be well enough to drive home. The pain has decreased somewhat. The nausea has decreased. I know I'm going to have more diarrhea, but because I can feel it coming, but that's okay.
It's a cleansing.
Yeah, it's going away. It empties things out. Things that, they don't need to be there.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and doing this for us.
Well, thanks.
Yes.
I mean, believe me, it is my pleasure because, I love doing this. But getting to do this, I'm so honored that you come and are interactive and receive this information.
Looking forward to next week.
All righty. Let's see what happens here. So thank you. We're going to talk about the hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and the 4-step creative process of Rossi.
That's good.
Thank
I
you.
want to hear more about the trance because I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really important to normalize trance. To normalize trance.
Feel better.
That this is the way that we are. We have the ability to go into trance state all by ourselves.
But just get home before you do it.
Yeah. Well, it'll
Feel
happen.
better, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. It'll happen when I'm driving home. It always does. Stuff will happen. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us again for Wonderful Wednesdays, sponsored by Open at the Top International Spiritual Center, a covenanted community of the Centers for Spiritual Living. We've been here at the Heart Space every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for the past 14 years. Please join us again next week. If you'd like to contact me, please email me at drjim@drjimturnage.com. That's drjim, drjim, at drjimturnage.com. Peace and blessings to you all, and have a wonderful week.